Hello and welcome to the 52nd episode of In Our Defense. Hi Abhishek, how are
Hi
you?
Dev, how are you doing?
All well. कैसे हो?
Very well. क्या चल रहा है आप बताओ?
कुछ नहीं, very newsy few days actually. Lots of stuff happening. It's been very busy just covering the general news. Not much
Political
in
developments,
political
I think,
developments.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
much in
Not so much happening in the defense
in
world.
the world of defense. Yeah,
But,
except if you want to talk about, Amritpal Singh, kind of related to national security.
yeah, security definitely.
Yeah.
In fact, we were thinking that should we talk
We
about
should,
it?
yeah.
Maybe in the
Maybe.
Weeks to come, because I don't think that issue is dying down.
Yeah,
anytime
it's not. And also because I have some very controversial theories about, with absolutely no backing,
Yeah.
I'll just say, but very controversial theories about this whole case, things to do with how up until just a year ago he was in Dubai. It's like,
Suddenly he's come back
sporting like very modern clothes, spike
It
cut
needs to be
hair.
demystified, isn't it?
Yeah, and suddenly you have him become a sort of preacher in the heart of Punjab. Something doesn't add up actually over here.
A lot of things don't add up.
A lot of things. I love the twinkle in your eye when you said that. So like you know things that you don't want to say right now.
No, again, I mean, it's something that you can't back it up with evidence.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the realm of speculation, definitely things don't add up.
Yeah.
It's not the movement, his movement doesn't seem to be as organic as
Exactly.
these movements are
Supposed to be.
isn't it? So-
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe for another day.
Yeah, for another day. But we'll discuss that. We'll definitely discuss that because I think that's a topic worth discussing. Especially because on a serious note, I think, and we've discussed this in one of our previous episodes, the internal security threat due to the Khalistani movement in Punjab, it's been kind of rearing its head in the last couple of years now.
Yeah.
You've, I think, in our discussions, I'm not sure if it was during the podcast or off the mic, but you've kind of alluded to how there's also lots of politics involved there. It's not just, again, as organic
No,
as
it is. See,
would
after all,
seem.
it is a political movement.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't completely ignore that aspect.
Yeah.
If you are talking about any kind of separatist movement, then it is a very political thing. And then, of course, the terrorism and the militancy, there is a history to it. I mean, the sitting prime minister was killed
Yes.
by who we can safely call terrorists,
Yeah.
and who were part of that movement.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely there is a lot to talk about, and it is a major security problem, and I wouldn't want to call it internal security anymore,
Yeah.
because I feel that security challenges, the lines are blurred. What is external and what is internal?
Yeah. True.
If it's a security concern, it's a security concern.
Doesn't matter if it's from.
And
outside
then
or
you have
inside.
so many of these people outside the country as well,
Yeah,
isn't it,
true.
who are supporting this movement. We had that incident at the Indian High Commission. In fact,
In,
I
UK.
was there
In the
when that
UK.
protest was happening.
Oh, okay.
We can talk about it when we
Yeah.
discuss this week's episode
Yeah.
in detail. I happened to be in UK for something else, for covering an exercise. And then I got some time in London, about 24 hours. So I went to the Indian High Commission as well to just get a chance to see what's happening. And there was quite a serious crowd that had gathered. A lot of people were young and women, children. So definitely begs the answer, what's getting them there?
Yeah.
Who's behind them? And, this was just a few days after the flag was brought down from the Indian High Commission in London.
Yeah.
And then the Indian High Commission responded with a larger flag,
over
on
there.
on the walls, and also on the terrace. I sent a report saying that Indian High Commission staff are on the terrace waving the flag, waving the tricolour. So that sort of I think riled them up even more.
Yeah.
But I think it was a befitting response. I mean, see, nothing wrong with protesting. You can't get into my house and remove my flag.
Of course.
Isn't it? It's very clear.
Yeah.
So I don't see any justification. And it's certainly not a protest.
Yeah.
The moment you cross that line, then you've crossed the line of a peaceful, legitimate protest.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, we will definitely talk about this issue in one of our future episodes. And, to our listeners and viewers, if you also have any ideas that you want us to talk about, some of you have been listening to us for a good over 50 episodes now. So
It's almost a year, isn't it?
Almost a year. Actually, 52
I think
would
it's a
be a
year,
year.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's a
52
year,
would be a year, yeah. So if you want us to talk about anything that you have in mind, do reach out to us. Drop a text to us at 8588 or an email to us at pods@indiatoday.com. That's pods@indiatoday.com. Right. So Abhishek and I actually, we're meeting after 2 weeks now, because normally we meet every week to record an episode. But for people who've been listening to us for a while, they'd know that the last episode was actually a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorites that we've recorded with a special guest, Major Samartur, one of Abhishek's friends, who recounted experiences in Siachen and in South Sudan, where he was part of a UN peacekeeping force. So we'll have the links to those episodes in our show notes. And I'd recommend to everyone, even if you're joining for the first time, to really listen to those episodes, because
it's not just good storytelling, but genuinely a lot of information that's not easily available in the public domain.
And it's not your thriller sort of a thing. It was like
very factual,
actual lived experiences.
Very
factual and emotional as well.
Very emotional and very relatable. The moment you have a face to these stories, then you realize that these are not robots.
Exactly.
In this era of ChatGPT and AI, these are just normal human beings like us.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not superheroes. They do train themselves in a manner where they can withstand these tough conditions. But they're not robots, they are humans.
Yeah. Right. So, we please listen to those episodes and do let us know again what you thought of those episodes. So, where have you been for the last couple of weeks? What have you been up to?
You're making it feel as if I was on some secret mission, clandestine mission.
Would you, by the way, want to ever be on a secret clandestine mission?
I mean, I don't think so.
Why?
Why should a journalist be on a clandestine mission? Come to think of it.
It's true, but...
And if you're on a clandestine mission, then your stories need to be clandestine. Isn't it? If you're on a secret mission where you are, say, part of an investigative story, that is fine, but the end result cannot be secret.
Of course. Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah, so, I mean, there are times that one is on a story where you don't talk about much.
Yeah.
Not so much now in my life, but earlier... Those moments have come when we're working on a story, you don't openly talk about it.
But does it happen? I've read about this. I'm not sure if it was a fiction book or if it was a non-fiction biography of somebody. But and this is about the US, not India. But there used to be these reporters, and this was, I think, 60s, 70s, who would disappear for months on end. The editors would have no idea. And then suddenly they'll be back one day in office like, bro, I have a story.
We have such reporters. I mean, we still have some of them who are there. So it's not that they go underground. But, I mean, they're not seen so much in office.
Achha.
So that's normal. I don't. I've seen that. Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever been one of those reporters?
Not on a permanent basis.
Achha.
I would say. Yeah, but once in a while maybe. But not. That's not been my bread and butter, because as a beat reporter going to the powers of corridor, you can't be missing in action.
Of course.
My Eden Gardens is so that speak. Place. I have to be there. I have to be present there. If I'm not present there, then there's a problem. So slightly different for me. Yeah, but to your question, where was I, which you think was some secret mission? It wasn't. I mean, it was a completely legitimate journalistic trip. So I was in the UK, and that's why I mentioned being outside the Indian High Commission. While the purpose was not to cover the Khalistani protests and the Khalistani movement that's happening there, but I ended up doing a bit of it on my way back. But the purpose was to cover an Air Force exercise, a 7-nation Air Force exercise which the UK was hosting, exercise Cobra Warrior. Air forces from 7 nations were there. Exciting time. That's the least I can say. When I still see a fighter aircraft take off or land, I get goosebumps. So that's how simply I can put it. Every time I've seen quite a few, but whenever it happens, even on TV, if I see it actually, I get goosebumps to be there in flesh and blood at the tarmac. That piercing noise going through your ears, that feel of being inside the cockpit when you're not seeing pilots in the overalls getting into those cockpits. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've only been able to only see videos of it. So,
I love the videos as
I
well.
love the videos as well. I get goosebumps. And you speak of videos, just like as an aside, when I wanted to ask you ever since I came across, I don't know for what reason, but my Instagram algorithm of late has been showing me all these fighter jet takeoff reels. And one of the things that caught me, and these are again, Western.
I have started, by the way, I have made 2 reels.
Oh, really?
Both are on fighter aircraft.
You should have told us about this. Yeah?
Both are on fighter aircraft. I think it should be
You should have
promoted
told
by
our
the
producer
India
Anna
Today.
about this. She's been after us to make reels, and she would be over the moon right now.
It's the fact that she's not seeing my reels says a lot about me. Isn't it?
I think
how seriously she takes me, and she expects our listeners and viewers to be taking us seriously.
No, you'll get there. I mean, 2 reels is like, you'll get
2
there.
reels, both on fighter aircraft. One on board Vikrant, and the other one during exercise Cobra.
No, actually,
Have
if
a
you don't
look,
mind, I
guys.
think we'll run them for at least our video listeners.
Have
at
a
the
look,
end
and
of
I'm trying
this.
to be quite professional, with captions and all of that. My son has been helping me with
Oh,
it.
wow. Nice. Nice. So, I think in the 52 episodes, 1 year of audio, last few episodes, audio with video, and now Instagram reels.
So maybe we can have in some time to come, while we are chatting, in another window, reels made by me.
Yeah, definitely running them. Actually,
Isn't it?
yeah, we'll tell
Isn't it?
Anna that you can have something behind me, just like a scroll of Abhishek's reels made. Yeah. Yeah, right. So anyway, coming
That's
back
my
to
newfound love. I don't know. There's another reel that I made of me cooking.
Oh.
So, yeah, not connected to aircraft, fighter aircraft, but I think these are the 3 reels I've made till now.
And I think cooking
In
is
about a
like
month.
the
In about
way
a
to
month.
get hit on Instagram, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still learning the tricks.
Yeah.
on
Cooking
Instagram.
and dog videos, I think. So if you have a pet, you can try.
Oh, I think military stuff can do well if you keep
definitely,
doing it regularly.
Yeah,
I think,
just like I hope our podcast does well.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I have so much on my phone, which is military videos and pictures, sometimes I get tempted. Should I make a reel out of it? Then I say, this is too old. Is that news mentality?
I think on a serious note, by the way, jokes apart, I think you really should.
It's typical news mentality. Na, ये तो पुराना हो गया.
नहीं, I think
Story
करना
हो गई यार. अब Ukraine, I have Ukraine stuff when I was covering the war.
हाँ.
And those days I wasn't into making a reel.
Reels.
The concept didn't even cross my
Yeah.
mind. And today I think if I make a reel, would it be good? क्या मतलब? We
I think
keep thinking in the news cycle.
But that's what I mean. The thing about reels is that you don't have to think so much. कर दो, चला तो चला, नहीं चला तो नहीं चला. It's fine.
To shed our inhibitions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good
Right.
advice.
So going back to my question and about fighter jets taking off. So a couple of these reels that I saw, I'm guessing this was the US Air Force or I don't know, some other Western Air Force. There are these guys called shooters, right? The ones who basically kind of say okay to the pilot before taking off on the ground. Do they have a weird sort of a dance routine before a fighter jet takes off? Have you seen that ever? I saw the reels, पता नहीं सच के नहीं है, but
actually, to be frank.
not a dance routine per se, but they have like, just a very over-exaggerated way of sending the plane off. It's not as simple as, for example, when your plane has landed at an airport, you have those guys navigating the plane to the parking bay with those green and red tube lights. It's not as simple as just point and like bye and salute. It's like just very over-exaggerated, jumping in air and stuff like that. Have you ever seen that happening?
I don't know. I mean, if it's slipped my observation, but I've really not seen
Achha.
somebody. I mean, yeah, exaggerated. You can say one, but it's nowhere close to dancing. I mean, so sorry to sort of.
So maybe then those
blow,
reels were
blow your
not
bubble here,
not the
but
reality.
not dancing, but exaggerated movements. Maybe
Perhaps,
yes.
Right. Anyway, so let's talk about your experience in the UK covering exercise Cobra Warrior. You said air forces from 8 countries.
7 countries,
7
including
countries.
India and UK, of course.
These were UK,
So,
India, and
UK, India, US, Finland, Singapore, South Africa, Belgium, Saudi Arabia.
Oh, Saudi Arabia.
That's an important one.
I was just going to say interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting to be in that company. Yeah. We'll actually, I think, circle back to that in a bit. How many days were you there for?
4-5 days in the country. It was a packed schedule. Just landed and went straight to this place called Lincoln. I think we reached almost at midnight.
Oh,
Next morning was at the air base in Waddington. So the Royal Air Force base in Waddington, where this exercise was being carried out. The entire day at the airbase, which is usual when you go for something like this. And again, the same evening, came back to another place, to a place called Ashford, from where we were taken to, next morning again taken to a place which is also interesting. We can talk about in detail, maybe later in the show if you want. But I'll definitely introduce our itinerary to you. This is where I actually interacted with Ukrainian soldiers who are getting trained by, in UK, getting trained by the militaries of UK, Canada, some of the other NATO countries. So there's this hub that they've created, and it just resembles the war in Ukraine.
But what were they doing was it an air exercise or?
No, these are two separate things. That's what I'm
Okay, so
saying.
you just ended up being at a place where this was happening.
These
Achha,
are two separate things.
Right.
So that's why I said that we can talk about this separately as well, which was part of the trip. And so that hub resembles the war in Ukraine.
Okay.
Exactly. I've been to Ukraine when the war
Yeah.
was perhaps at its peak. Not to say that it's subsided now. So you could get a sense that you are in Ukraine. Similar kind of houses, streets.
Wow.
So that kind of an atmosphere was created, where there was a basic training being given to young volunteer recruits of the Ukrainian forces. So it was a short trip, then got back to London. That's when I visited the High Commission. A lot of protests were happening. I reported from there shortly for a few hours. And then we were back, but the highlight was exercise Cobra Warrior. Few interesting things that stand out, which of course the Air Force doesn't say. Indian Air Force wouldn't say officially, but they will not deny it as well. So there were 3 squadrons from which the contingent had been made of. 3 separate squadrons of the Indian Air Force.
Indian Air Force, yeah.
All Mirage squadrons.
Okay.
So there were 5 Mirages there, and Mirage was part of Balakot.
Balakot.
I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
One of the squadrons from where guys had gone was the squadron that bombed Balakot.
Okay.
So I think that was a highlight for me. In fact, in my story, the headline was this.
Was that, yeah.
Yeah, that Balakot squadron part of exercise Cobra Warrior. Which, by the way, this was India's first time at the exercise.
Oh, okay.
This was India's debut at Cobra Warrior. A debut with Balakot guys is, I think, a
Right,
cool
but so
statement.
let me just so that I understand that. So you had one team from the Indian Air Force. That team was made up of 3 squadrons.
Squadrons, that's right.
Not in the entirety, right? Parts of the 3 squadrons, right?
Yeah, bits and pieces.
So one part of it was from the squadron
yeah.
that was involved in the Balakot strike.
Now,
But-
if you
but
ask me whether those pilots were there
I
or
was
not,
just coming to that.
that would be difficult to say.
Yeah.
But there would be there. I mean,
But can you guess? Like you're saying,
Yeah.
they probably would be.
there's no big deal
Yeah.
if they are there. I mean, so they could be there.
Because Balakot was how many Mirages sent?
I don't remember the number now.
I think the initial reporting said 5, but then there was also a pack of Mirages that.
No, there was Sukhois that were used as a dummy.
Achha, dummy. Okay.
Yeah,
I think it
There
was
was
5
Sukhois
or
that were
6.
used. I don't remember the number now.
Right.
But if they were there, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
So I can share this, that one of the reporters who was part of this delegation was speaking to the CEO of, and he was the CEO of the squadron,
of the Balakot squadron.
Yeah, of the 7th squadron based in Gwalior.
Yeah.
So he introduced the interview before asking any question that I'm here with the CEO of the Balakot boys. So he said, "Stop, please. I can't be."
Yeah.
He said, "You want to do anything in your reporting, that's fine, but
Cannot,
no
of
sort of attributing Balakot boys and all."
Yeah.
So a wild guess, maybe the CEO was part. I don't know. But seriously, I mean,
But
that's
professionalism at its,
yeah.
at
So
its best.
we
by
don't
the way.
know.
Yeah.
So so that I think that was one of the highlights, to make a debut in an international exercise such as this, where there are 7 air forces, and you have that same, you have perhaps pilots from the same squadron, and definitely you have representation from the same squadron, is decent messaging at an international.
Yeah, I was going to say
platform.
that because let
Very
me,
very decent messaging at a.
So let me just join a couple of dots here, which is what we do on this podcast a lot. So you have India debuting at a air exercise, and some of the pilots, or like some of the pilots are
Definitely
from
the
a
squadron.
squadron,
Definitely the
from a
squadron,
that took part in the Balakot airstrike. And at the same air exercise, you have Saudi Arabia present. So all of this, do you think all of this was
No,
factored in?
that's what military diplomacy is. We'll
about, yeah.
talk about that as well. And these exercises are about military diplomacy, and military diplomacy is a very, for want of a better expression, what do I say? It's something really vague. It's not your usual diplomacy that happens in a very sophisticated, suave manner. Here there's jointmanship, camaraderie through soldiers. But what is it that you're trying to tell the world? That you are a force to reckon with at the end of the day. That's what you're... So there's camaraderie. There's a lot of, josh or whatever you want to say. But the messaging is that we are strong. And to send your squadron, which has been part of action... see, there haven't been any air raids, air assault, air fights across the world.
Yeah, true.
So to be part of a group where there are maybe Indian Air Force had 18 fighter pilots. Let's say all of them had about 20, so easily above 100 fighter pilots there. And amongst those 100, if there are 2-3 who've been part of real action, that's the point I'm trying to make. Who have actually bombed a real target. No drills, nothing. Bombed a real target. So I think it's very solid messaging somewhere. Where you have Air Force from US, from UK itself, Saudi Arabia. I mean, all important countries, isn't it? So I think that was one aspect which to me was the big takeaway.
But so, how does it when you say military diplomacy, because these are two, different ministries, at least in India back home, how does this whole planning happen? Is it done at the MEA level, or is it done at the Ministry of Defense level, or is it like a sort of I want to know basically who in this government would have decided, let's send the boys from the Balakot squadron over there?
See, I don't think the political leadership will take this decision. I mean, it's too micro for them. It would be, at the end of the day, the Air Force.
Okay.
I don't think a diktat will come to the Air Force that you send them.
Of course, yeah.
It could be an idea that the Air Force thought and would want to share it with the MOD. Obviously with the MOD. The MOD might want to share it with MEA. MEA might want to share it with PMO. Right. That's okay. But I don't think it's top to bottom.
Down. Okay.
Isn't it? It's too much of micromanagement. I mean, the Prime Minister's office saying which squadron to send.
Of course.
It ideally shouldn't happen that way, and I don't think it's happening that way.
Yeah. Right. So anyway, you met them, chatted with them. So what was the overall experience like? So what's it? So we've had an entire episode about exercises between armies, ground troops. What's an exercise when it comes to the air forces all about? What do they practice? What do they?
It looks a little vague actually. What's exactly happening? Because when
you can't see most.
When armies conduct an exercise or drills, they are visible, and whatever explanation is given to you, it's also easy to understand. They say that we've war gamed this. This is the target. We have to enter that home. There is a hostage crisis. There are militants, etc., etc. It's a very clearly laid out, easy to understand, relatable kind of a situation that is created. Here, it's once they take off, you don't know what's happening. Frankly, because they are not seen.
Yeah, of course.
Usually, the targets are in the sea and places like that where it's safe. Here, it was definitely over the sea because it was close to the coast. One thing that stood out to me actually was that so much in common when it comes to militaries. It actually doesn't matter which country you are from. They're all the same. It was that usual lunch that we had under a tent at the airbase. Seemed exactly like India except the cuisine. But the culture, also because I think it's UK. Of course, there is a lot of similarities in British our military culture. Colonial hangover, as some like to say. So be it. But And to this colonial hangover, just going off the main topic, which we so many times end up doing.
No.
So there was this young officer who was escorting us around, and she said that I really find this cool that, the officers of the Indian Air Force and you guys are mostly speaking in English.
Wow. Ouch.
Yeah. So the officer said, yeah, I mean, English is, in their forces, it's almost like a first language.
Yeah.
Not that we don't know Hindi or
Hindi.
something, but because of some terms. I mean, even when you're speaking to troops on the ground who might not be good at English. By the way, air warriors, so airmen as it's called, or even a sailor, their English is decent, better than the troops in the army. I mean, not doing any kind of profiling, but maybe.
No, but I'm guessing that's got to do with the requirement.
That's
for
what I
training,
mean. That's
because
what I mean.
These
Yeah.
guys need to be, I think, technically
A little. So technical words you can't find
in other languages.
translations in Hindi and things like that. So, I mean, so she said that I like the idea that you guys speak so much in English, even though you know other languages, and you switch when you want to switch to another language. You switch.
Wow.
So I said, yeah, good observation. So so much for shedding the colonial hangover, that us speaking in English is appreciated by an English officer.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, but so, at these exercises, I've always wondered, do these pilots end up flying each other's aircraft?
No. That will not happen.
Not
They'll end up flying with each other.
Just to get a feeling, but not...
No, with each other, as in they'll be part of the same mission and things like that.
Okay. But I didn't... No, I didn't mean officially as part of a mission. What I meant was just to try, for example, if you have Indian pilots there and let's say the French are trying to sell us a Rafale, you'll maybe get to try a Rafale jet. Well, no.
That might not happen. Civilians are not allowed. Indian civilians are not allowed, so I don't think we'll allow pilots and military personnel of another country to get into our machines.
Right.
A lot of secret coding, things like that could be there.
But, so on a serious note, is it just because of only that, or also because every fighter jet on its own is sort of a different machine altogether? So even
No, you can be trained on another machine. That's
right.
That's not something that cannot be done. I think the only reason is not compromising your...
But what I meant was without the training. So, for example, in civil aviation, an Airbus pilot, for example, cannot just hop into a Boeing jet and start flying it.
So I'll answer your question very simply. So let's take Rafale, for example, latest example, new induction. So when the official induction of Rafale happened, the first aircraft was officially handed over to the Indian Air Force in France. I happened to be there for that ceremony. This was in 2019. After that, there was an Indian contingent based in the airbase in France, in Mérignac, where Indian pilots were getting trained at the Rafale.
Oh, okay.
And once that finished, they brought those Rafales in.
Right.
So there was a time period where they were actually in that country, because now one Rafale has been handed over to you. So you are officially the owner of one Rafale. So you can train on the trainer fighter jets which are there.
Right.
Of course, you can train on the one that has been handed over to you as well. So that's how it functions there.
Right. Cool. So, going back to the exercise, the last time we discussed an exercise, I think that was about the Indian-US...
Yuddhabhyas.
Yuddhabhyas, Indian-US armies in somewhere in Uttarakhand. And nowadays...
It was an Oli in Uttarakhand.
Oli, yeah.
Close to, not too far from LAC.
Yeah.
China had a problem.
Yeah.
So that's why I said military diplomacy.
So I was going to come to that,
we'll touch upon other exercises.
Yeah, so I was going to come to that. So... these days, I mean, I'm not sure if it happened before as well, but these days, whenever you talk about exercises, whether it's what happened in Oli or whether it's sea exercises, the Quad one, for example, there's always this context of, who is it aimed, which country is it aimed, stuff like that. So Cobra Warrior, this grouping of 7 countries, what do you think was the larger aim of these exercises?
No, I don't think it was... this particular exercise was aimed at anybody. because the kind of countries that were there are not necessarily part of any alliance or any military group. So if say example, if the Quad was there, then one could say what you're trying to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the Navy does a Quad exercise, Malabar.
Yeah.
And China gets all riled up with it because it's very apparent what they're trying to do. In this case, that wasn't the scenario. Yes, there are exercises where you want to send a message to somebody. Yuddhabhyas being held in Oli was definitely one such instance. And why I said military diplomacy again, so Quad, we have one example. When the 4 countries get together, India, Australia, US and Japan, why does China get irritated? Because they feel that this is a sort of some kind of a military alliance, which it's not. India has made it very clear that Quad is not a military alliance. It's a larger group for assistance, including military.
Yeah.
So it's a smart way of doing it. So it's certainly not a military alliance. It doesn't mean that we will fight for each other. The messaging at these exercises is also visible in, I'll give you another example. It says an exercise that the Indian Navy hosts, exercise Milan. So last edition of exercise Milan, there were 40 countries participating.
Oh,
that's
huge. A big number, yeah.
In some way or the other. Not all 40 sent warships. Somebody will come, send their crew, some officers. So it's representation of 40 countries. 40 naval nations, let's put it this way. Nations that, not every nation, first of all, has a great navy. Yeah. So you've already reduced the number. So when you have 40 of them sending their representatives, it becomes very, very significant. And that's where that military diplomacy that we're talking about. Yeah. Recently, we've just had India-Africa Army exercise in Pune, just 2 days back. So it's the entire African continent that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So I think these kind of messagings are extremely important. And one more takeaway from this particular exercise that I got was that at the same time, simultaneously, the Indian Air Force was part of 3 exercises in different parts of the world.
Okay.
In Japan, UAE, and here. So while the Japan and the UAE exercises had finished, when this was still on, but there was a time that all 3 exercises were happening, and the Indian Air Force contingents were there, or even before that, preparing to be together in 3 different exercises in different parts of the world. Just goes on to show your global imprint as an Air Force.
Right.
That you're wanted in international exercises, international war drills, war games. And it's not just one. So if you're doing it in 3 places, you need assets
to be able to
be able to be there also.
Yeah.
So that means you have enough assets to be part of 3 exercises that are happening simultaneously. Having said that, the squadron strength has dropped significantly. Yeah. Nobody should think that this is enough. Yeah. If the Air Force chief is listening to this, he'll say, what the hell is this guy talking?
I was just going to say that, we should not really...
But the other fact is that the Great Indian Jugaad.
Yeah, of course.
The Great Indian Jugaad is something that the Indian forces have mastered. They are the masters of it. More than the civilians, I think. Itne mein kaam chal raha hai, theek hai. But that doesn't mean that we don't need more. So 42 is the squadron strength of the Indian Air Force. To break it down, 42 means, if you can do the maths quickly, 42 into, 18. Each squadron has 18 aircraft. Comes down to how much?
My math is very bad even at this, by the way.
I think the people who would be listening would have done it by now, actually. So the point is that 42 is the squadron strength. Okay, Anna tells us.
It's around, I think, 750.
700 plus is what you need.
Yeah.
And it's down to 32 squadrons right now.
Yeah.
So the numbers are really low. So despite that, you are able to sort of ensure that you have assets in 3 places. And more importantly, this was again in a lighter vein. More importantly, the fact that you are wanted more for international exercises shows that the global outreach of the Indian Air Force. Last year, the Indian Air Force participated in a multinational Australian exercise I think there were 17 or 18 countries there. Su-30s went.
Hmm.
So the frequency is increasing, and it's again part of that big thrust on military diplomacy.
Right. So one last question about this particular exercise. I was a bit, I wouldn't say taken aback, but a bit surprised when you said Saudi Arabia in the list of countries. Were you, when you read the list of countries that will be participating? And if so, or if not, for whatever reason, but then why? Because I think it's not really a name you would think of when you have an exercise like this, especially with countries that you mentioned.
I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that Saudi Arabia is one of our best friends, at least India's.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert to talk about their relations with other countries. Actually, they have a decent relationship with the West.
Yeah.
Come to think of it.
Yeah. I think if you have oil, I think it'll be everyone's friend, by the way.
Yeah. So they're close to US, definitely. So if they're close to US, why shouldn't they be part of an exercise such as this? Yeah. I mean, and they are a big friend of India, I can say so, because some of our big ticket intelligence operations that have resulted in some big deportations, quote unquote, have been from Saudi Arabia. Actually, that's quite old, not a recent thing. A lot of stories that I reported on.
Yeah.
Stuff related to 26/11, ISIS. We've had a lot of help from them, and whenever you hear the word, and there was a trend. I think 3-4 big catches in the Indian custody were deported, quote unquote, from Saudi Arabia. And handed over to Indian authorities at Indira Gandhi International Airport.
Very convenient.
Handed over.
Right. We'll discuss more on this topic and about the other aspect of your visit in the UK, but after a quick break.
All those Sikhs who left and fled India, sought asylum elsewhere, are not those, even though they were from the farming community, many could not speak English when they went, they're not the ones who ended up being poor and only labor class in the respective countries. In fact, they ended up becoming quite wealthy. Most of them owners, whether they did well in the business of farming or property, small businesses that turned big, or then the second generation taking their business and making it empires. These, quite a few of them are very, very wealthy. And you see that support coming in for when it comes to resources, because they're never resource crunched. They have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And with that money, the next step that they took was enter politics. And by the second generation, the generations after, entered politics as well. And so they're not only moneyed, they are also hold power and sway. They became a vote bank, particularly in Canada. Less so in other countries, but in UK, in Canada, and in parts of America, the Sikh community, Indian community are a huge vote bank, but particularly in Canada and London, the Sikh community are a very, very important vote bank. And when you have a vote bank, that you, if you are from a party that espouses diversity, speaks of all people, then your vote bank would be these diverse people and these diverse communities as well. So for Trudeau to be able to, during elections and even before, if you see the whole trip to Gurudwaras, trying to garner support is not just only, of course, he thinks of it as well, but is particularly to get votes.
Welcome back. Abhishek and I are discussing his recent trip to the UK, where he took part in a air exercise called Cobra Warriors, of which India was part. During the discussion, you mentioned how they are very different. Air exercises are very different from land-based exercises because you really can't see. And that got me thinking about this one thing I've always meant to ask you. So, when the Balakot airstrike happened, and more than that, the dogfight that followed the day after, That's when I first came across this term that's known as BVR, Beyond Visual Range, which is usually used to signify missiles. BVR missile, essentially. What I'm guessing, I'm not sure, you can confirm, is a missile that can be fired without the pilot having to physically see the fighter jet in front of him. Now, I've grown up watching war movies like Top Gun, where you have, pilots eyeballing each other in midair, and a jet flying over Tom Cruise's canopy, and
So in a dogfight that happens, yeah.
So I was going to come to that.
Yeah.
So when you said you can't really see what's happening up there, so are these today's modern jets, are they so advanced that if there's a dogfight or any sort of aerial engagement, it happens from so far off that you can't see each other, or does it really happen close by with today's modern jets? I'm not talking about like World War II. Obviously, I knew it happened back then, but with the jets that we have, all these countries have today, do you think that still can happen?
You mean a
Aerial dog fights, are they very, very close, or are they?
Yeah, what happened post Balakot was exactly what you have described.
Right.
I mean, there were people in. That's why it was a dogfight.
Yeah.
The moment you use that term, so there was a chase. I mean, Wing Commander, now Group Captain Abhinandan, was actually chasing an Pakistani F-16. So he was trying to,
But so what I mean is that, so that's when I got confused when you have terms like BVR being used. Was he chasing the aircraft based on his radar, or was he chasing him by actually watching the aircraft in front of him?
Both. I mean, he's getting instructions as well,
Right.
what's happening through his radio set. And there are situations where you actually can see that there are 1, 2, 3 fighters surrounding you, and it's very much possible. But yeah, because not many aerial fights have happened, that's why
Perhaps
we probably don't know.
We don't know exactly.
But post Balakot, it happened. I mean,
happened, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, you as a reporter obviously won't get to be part of that, to be able to describe it to us very vividly.
No,
as
also
well.
because it's not happened that frequently.
True.
See, it's not like a skirmish at the line of control,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So
true.
it's not happened. So something that's not happened in decades. Now it's difficult to put a frequency to, isn't it? How often can it happen? Does it happen 10% of the times when there is aerial action? Because it's hardly happened.
Right. So a couple of more questions on your trip to the UK. You've answered one of the questions I was going to ask actually. Why, if these exercises are just supposed to be about interoperation between militaries or different forces, why is media such a big contingent or part of it? But I'm guessing you answered it in the first half when you said it's more about diplomacy as well.
Yeah.
About sending a message for which you would need a media person. So, for example, the Air Force obviously won't say on the record that we are sending the Balakot squadron there, but then you have the media digging that out from the number of the squadron.
And then they are not denying it either.
as well, yeah. So
it's fine.
So you need that, yeah. So what's the interaction between journalists? I mean, not the Indian ones. When you interact with the journalists of the other countries who are part of the...
Actually, this was just an Indian contingent.
Oh, really?
I think they had in different phases.
Okay, so at one point only one country.
So when we went, there were 4-5 of us from India. So it was just an Indian contingent.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But when there were people who had visited earlier.
But is that strange, or is it
I don't know. It depends on how they plan out things.
Right.
So I don't know if this is the norm. This is the first multi-nation exercise that I covered.
Okay.
You've usually covered,
bilaterals. Yeah.
This was the first multi-nation. Have I covered? Yeah, I think this is definitely the first exercise outside India that I covered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, US, we all know, Yuddh Abhyas is a big one, which gets a lot of traction. Malabar, as I mentioned, gets a lot of traction. Milan gets a lot of traction. These are all naval exercises. Yeah, I mean, Air Force, pitch black, as I said recently in Australia, was in the headlines. Otherwise, I can't think. I mean, there are exercises that the Air Force is part of, which are bilateral, but multi-nation, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, this was also a debut, as I said.
Right. Yeah. True.
At Cobra Warrior. I like these names, by the way. And
yeah, Cobra Warrior.
Who comes up with these names is something. Yuddh Abhyas. Yuddh Abhyas actually is the one with US. I think it lacks
Yeah,
any kind
it's
of
the most.
creativity.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a literal
Yuddha
translation
vyas.
of
War
exercise.
exercise.
War exercise.
Come on, thoda to.
True.
Milan is good.
Huh.
Trying
But
to
also,
sort
if you come to think of it, Milan also is like, yeah, it's not really original. I mean,
yeah.
theek hai. Malabar is for what? Malabar is for
I don't know why is it called, because our coast is called Malabar.
maybe
one of our
maybe because
coasts,
of that.
so
Yeah,
maybe.
So let's talk about the other experience that you had. So you described that before the break as well, where you came across or you went to a base where some troops from the Ukraine, not troops, I mean freshly recruited soldiers were being trained. Was that first of all part of the program, or did you just happen to be on the same?
It was part of the program. A visit was planned there,
Right.
by the British High Commission in India. I mean, they just wanted to showcase how, again, it's messaging, isn't it? How we are training Ukrainians, and see, there are no pretensions anymore now.
Yeah.
It's very open that we are supporting them, and the support is just it's not just moral support.
Yeah.
It's gone much beyond that, to an extent that we are allowing them to come to our
Our-
military bases.
Yeah. And
These are secret military bases. We were not allowed to give the name of the place.
Okay.
So it's one of those hubs that they have, which is a training center. We also have, India also has similar places. Oli is one of them. So we were taken there. We were told, this was close to a town called Ashford. They said you can mention Ashford. On the outskirts of Ashford, there was one of these hubs where Ukrainians are getting trained. Not just UK, there were personnel from other countries as well. All Western countries supporting Ukraine.
NATO basically.
NATO as well. There was Canada as well.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of NATO countries. And they are saying that by the end of this year, we are looking at training 20,000 Ukrainian soldiers.
Wow.
10,000 have already been trained since June last year. And by the end of 2023, they will touch the figure at 20,000. And I'm sure this will continue even after that.
Right.
So there's a steady training of Ukrainian soldiers on British soil. I mean, that's a big thing. And these guys are going to go back and going to be at the front line. And again, I always look at human stories here in places like this. So the story that I did also. These are guys who are leading normal civilian lives. Somebody had a garage where he was working at, rather an owner of a garage. One guy was handmade leather artist. He was a specialist at handmade leather art. So I found this, from handmade leather art to pulling a trigger. Completely 360-degree turn of your life within a few months. And I came across these guys these kind of people when I was in Ukraine covering the war. I met a soldier who left his job at an ad agency and joined the Ukrainian forces. So it's a volunteer force. And what's scary is that when things calm down, whenever they do, then what happens to this volunteer force? That's something which is very, very dangerous. Civilians with guns. Of course, you're made to believe that they'll have to hand over their weapons, etc. But civilians trained at warfare is a scary thought. It's more scary than anything, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the US went through a phase of that during the Vietnam War, because back then they had to, just like suddenly get people from just like everyday life, train them, send them to war, make them see shit, basically hell, and then kind of try to assimilate them back into society.
One of the critiques of our Agniveer system is
exactly that. Yeah.
Why train somebody at warfare?
Warfare. Yeah.
Not just using a weapon. They're trained at warfare. These guys could be going and fighting a war for India.
Yeah.
So why train somebody not at just handling weapons, but train them at warfare and then leave them out into civilian life? For Ukraine, it's not a choice. It's not an option. They had to do it. We had an option. Anyway, we don't want to turn this into an Agniveer
Of course,
debate.
not that. But,
but
that's
as an
a
aside,
point to
just
consider, because Because I've also, like, in my family, I have a couple of people who are retired from the forces, not officers, but these are not, they are not people who've seen war, okay, but it's just like even just spending your entire life, or like a very huge chunk of your life, in a regimental sort of a system, and then trying to be back into normal human society where everything will irritate the fuck out of you, is very difficult. So I'm guessing if you've seen war and then if you have to go back to society and lead a normal life, it's going to be difficult for these Ukrainian people.
That's the biggest understatement that you and I can say.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how will their lives be back on track. Difficult is just the basic, most basic expression, I think, to say. But I mean.
Yeah, but also I'm guessing right now the country's not thinking about that, because right now it's a matter of more survival. But have you been following the developments in Ukraine?
No, of course I have been.
Because you've been there. Because honestly, I'll tell you something. Like most of the world has stopped really following. I see the headlines here and there.
No, see,
not something by the way you predicted like long ago on our episodes.
I mean, I have been following. I mean, as a defense journalist, of course, it's part of my job to be following. Also, when you go to some place, physically present there for so many days, you can identify to so many things.
Yeah.
So when I read a story that in this place this has happened, I know where this place is. Because the map of Ukraine and especially the map of the conflict zone is very clear in my head. I don't need to go back to the map and see where this place is. Those names are registered here now. So I know where is Kharkiv, where is Odessa, where is Mykolaiv, where is Kherson. So those things are very clear in my head. So when I read reports or come across stories that are talking of something in any of these places, I know exactly what has happened where. So I can sort of relate to the situation on the ground. Yeah, so being there, I think, is one of the reasons. Yeah. I would have followed what's happening anyway. It's much more relatable.
Right. So when you met these guys, did you get a chance to interact with the people getting training over there? No.
Yeah, of course. You did. Yeah. That's why I know that. That's why I'm saying that one of them did this, did that. I spoke to them. Of course, English was a problem.
Of course,
They had a translator, things like that. So,
So, I mean, what sort of sense are you getting? Because it's been, just like our podcast, it's been a little over a year for the Russia.
We started our podcast with the
war, yeah. So, a little over a year. Is it like, have they resigned to this fate that this is, at least for the near future, the new normal?
That's the reason why I think you have this pouring in of volunteer soldiers.
City supply, yeah.
I think that's that they have. They've said that this is how our lives are going to be. So, and I mean, frankly, nobody knows when it's going to end. As I've said before, that there has to be a ceasefire.
Of course, yeah.
And for a ceasefire, both parties have to realize when a ceasefire happens, you don't announce who's won and who's lost.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem here.
Sticking point, yeah.
Neither of the parties are willing to budge. That's why a ceasefire is not happening. A ceasefire means a ceasefire.
Yeah.
That's what a ceasefire is, that you end.
Yeah.
And most of the ceasefires are whoever is holding
whatever just stays there, basically.
That's what a ceasefire is. That's what happened in Kashmir.
Yeah.
And that's why we had the line of control. Now, you can, so many years down the line, you can say कि हमने पाकिस्तानियों को भगा दिया था, वो कर दिया, but it was a ceasefire. Let's face it. And that's why a part of Kashmir is not with you. So they were holding on to certain locations which are with them. And we held on to certain locations which are with us. So I think that's the only solution. But let's see how it pans out.
Right. I think we'll end it there. But before we do, actually, completely tangential question. Because you'd mentioned deportation before the break, and because we discussed Amritpal at the beginning of this episode, I just briefly want to talk to you about this. So with Amritpal's coverage, obviously the name Nepal once again has popped up. That he's kind of escaping to Nepal and jo bhi hai. In your years of because of your years of experience covering all these, the whole gamut of security, Ministry of Home Affairs, police, etc., what is it about Nepal and criminals?
If you ask me, frankly, it's become less fashionable now.
Yeah, but this again brought back memories of that.
As a younger reporter, there was a Nepal angle. See, this is a very police thing. I think now NIA and all are a little more professional. So Nepal has sort of is out of fashion. It's out of vogue now. But police के लिए थोड़ा common था यार. नेपाल भाग गए हैं, देखेंगे ये होगा वो होगा. Then secret team border पे मिली वो हुआ. So it was, and also some of these films that were made where ISI and RAW are working together and they reach Nepal.
Yeah.
Clandestine. That is what clandestine is, not where I go.
Because if you'd go by some of the media reports or some of the speculation or like some of the movies, you'd think Nepal is a country just full of spies. Like Chinese spies are there, ISI is there, RAW is there,
No,
like
which
all
is
spies of the world.
which is not completely off the mark.
Oh really?
See, I think because of its location, it does have a lot of these hubs for intel operatives to function. So a bit of it could be true.
Wow, okay. I was not expecting that answer actually.
No, it could be. Things do happen there. Not, as I said, not so much now. It's more a 90s, maybe even 80s or early 2000s thing. अभी थोड़ा सा currency कम हुआ है of bringing in Nepal for good thriller storytelling of these kind of incidents. I don't know where Amritpal is, frankly.
There is speculation, obviously, but I mean, no one knows. The Punjab police seems like it doesn't know. But yeah, Nepal, I mean, so because I think one of the stories that I keep hearing was like some fugitive that India wants suddenly ends up at Kathmandu airport somehow. He's caught from there and then brought to Delhi airport.
Again, Purana tha yaar. As I said, a lot of guys have come from Saudi.
Oh, so that's changed now. Like you said, NI has become more professional. Agencies have become.
Yes. So you can now infer a lot of things from Saudi. Why Saudi? Were they actually genuinely there in Saudi, or was there a secret operation in Pakistan and they were picked up and shifted to Saudi and then they were
formally taken to
open to interpretation. Also, UAE once in a while pops in that deported from UAE. Again, a similar kind of a story.
Yeah.
So I think it gives enough material for thrilling stories.
Yeah, of course. And again, I love how these stories, whenever they come up, speculation, are never denied officially. It's like, let them go, baat karne do. Just like how the Balakot squadron at the exercise was never denied.
No, but that is true.
That is true. It's
not any part of any propaganda. That is.
Of course. I'm not saying it is.
That's not that the 7th squadron was there.
It's
a matter of fact. There's no denying it. So please don't think that. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention, we started this episode talking about our previous 2 episodes. Yes. Where Major Samartur was there, who happens to be my junior from school. So this is the 3rd episode where there is my school connection.
Oh, really?
2 we did with Samartur.
Yes.
And this time in that exercise, I bumped into a senior from school.
Wow.
So Group Captain Madhup Gungula happened to be the exercise director. In the exercise. So he was the exercise director representing the Indian Air Force.
Okay.
So I think he was one of the senior most officers at the exercise from the Indian Air Force. So I recognized him. He came to give the usual sound bites and things like that. I recognized him. So I asked him, "Are you from Sherwood?" He said, "Yes." So we got chit-chatting and things like that. And interesting. This is the 3rd episode where there's a Sherwood connection. Of course, 2 were because one was an extension with Summer. And now this one. So my school connections in the military keep following this.
And I think we should
our podcast.
Yeah, and I think we should use some of your school connections and get some of your illustrious former batchmates or schoolmates to our podcast studio sometime.
I mean, many of them are serving, so it's difficult.
Yeah, right. Cool. I think let's end it there. Fun chat, Abhishek, as always. Great talking to you. And once again, envious of you. You get to visit and see these fancy exercises and especially hear the sound of a fighter jet taking off.
As I said, it's always a treat.
Yeah, because I have only heard them over Delhi NCR skies around the time of Republic Day when they're practicing for the parade.
I still look out from my balcony.
Even I do, yeah.
Having seen that so many times, having been to air bases, seen fly pass, even during rehearsals, I just go out to my balcony and try to see what's happening.
Exactly, yeah. Right. So yeah, envious of you, and but we'll come meet again next week and have some more
definitely.
chats. And for our listeners, for our viewers, once again, if you have anything you'd want to talk about, you want us to talk about, or if you just have a comment on what you think of our discussions, do let us know. Drop a comment on whatever platform you're listening to us on, whether it's YouTube or whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast. That's it for this week's Defense Dose. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries with our passport. Bye bye.